No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you. Give us a second. Just want to make sure everything gets online, and then we're going to be starting right on up. Hello, everyone. Oh, good to see you all. So, sorry. Technology, sometimes it doesn't do exactly what I want it to do. So, if this is the first time you've been with us on the show, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do have the live stream. This is a conversation with you and me talking about a lot of the issues that are going on and your thoughts about them. We do long-form political commentary here, something that sadly is rarely seen these days. Too many headlines, too many sound bites. So we're going to jump right on into it today because we have a lot to talk about. One of the things that I do want to mention, first of all, is in New York State, and of course in many states around the country, early voting is going to be occurring very shortly. I want people to know in the New York region, early voting starts on October 24th, and it will continue until November 1st. Many states will have similar kinds of time frames, depending on whether you're voting early or whether you're doing mail-in ballots or absentees. Please double check with your state, your local board of elections, to find out exactly when you're going to be able to do it in your state. I also strongly recommend to people, if you can, vote in person. It's really the best way. If you can't, try and get an absentee ballot, which is a verified source. We have heard from CBS, Politico, all the major news agencies that when you're not using secured voting processes, there are hundreds of different problems that come up with that. Just a day ago, we saw that in Pennsylvania, there were ballots that were found that were votes for, it doesn't matter who it was for, but ballots that were found that had been thrown into a dumpster. We've seen that in Minnesota. We've seen that in California. I really advise people, go out and vote. If you can't, do an absentee vote, but don't do a generic mail-in ballot, because there's no way to guarantee whether you're a Democrat or Republican, a conservative, a libertarian, no matter where you stand, there's no guarantee that your vote's going to actually make it in time to be counted. So I think that's really important. And I don't think enough of the news media are telling people about this. I don't think it's a big enough news announcement. And there's nothing worse than us finding out on November 4th, after the election, here's all these votes that were thrown into a dumpster because of somebody in the USPS, whether it's a union member who is upset because these are votes against Joe Biden, or someone else just taking the mail and throwing it away. It's just a horrible idea. And I am very concerned about that. So please do make sure you make a secure vote. I recommend in person, or if you can't do that, mail in an absentee. So with that said, and by the way, in case you're wondering, you can always call into the show at 607-242-1582. And that's for the program. We're always happy to hear your live voice telling us what you think is going on. We may be getting a call from a Back the Blue event. Not a Back the Blue, a BLM event that is going on in the southern tier of New York. Valerie Jokum mentions, I intended in voting in person. However, I did apply a month ago for an absentee ballot just in case Cuomo shuts down for whatever COVID reason he can. That's a big concern. You know, Valerie, I've heard a lot of people who have been mentioning that they're very concerned about, well, what about COVID-19? What we can tell for sure at this moment is there is a 99% survival rate for just about everyone, except if you happen to be over 70 and you have pre-existing conditions. So there shouldn't be any reason why COVID-19 prevents people from voting in person. I mean, people are protesting in person. We're going to work. We're going to the stores in person. We should be able to go and vote in person. I mean, if the mask is so effective, if social distancing is so important, then we can go in and vote. Just socially distance, not have a huge crowd all at once. People can go and vote. There should be no reason that we can't do that. And according to all the data we see across the country, not the number of cases. See, that's the big thing that people are being distracted with. Somewhere around 2.5 months ago, our major news media switched from saying, hey, here's the number of deaths that are associated with COVID-19, and they started talking about cases. And it's because that's fear. When you hear, oh, there are 7 million cases, well, you have to think, well, that must be important. It must be deadly. Otherwise, why would you tell us about cases? Because it doesn't matter. Because it's not the number of deaths. In New York State, just yesterday, there was 4 COVID deaths, 20 million people, just under 20 million people in New York State. It's not deadly. We should not. And you're right, and Valerie goes on to say, shouldn't is the key word. And I agree with you. We shouldn't, but we have to stand up. We have to, as voters and as citizens of the United States, we have to stand up and say, we're done with this. You're throwing fear at us. You're trying to make us afraid every day by telling us how many cases are going on. But that's why they're not mentioning mortality rates, because it's not the Black Plague. It's not the Spanish flu. It's not deadly. It is, well, I should say, it's not as deadly as they want you to feel like it is, because none of the data shows that. That doesn't mean we don't take care and protect those at risk, the elderly. We do that. But I think we can effectively do that if you want to wear a mask and we socially distance. We live everything else. There's no reason why we cannot vote in person. So I do recommend it, but I understand. And that's why we have, I don't like early voting either, because news and information comes up as we get closer to the election day. So there may be information that changes people's vote, but that's why we have early voting. There will be smaller crowds. Like in the southern tier of New York, there will only be 3 locations. A lot of people don't know that, and I recently did a video about that. For those who don't know, I'm running for an elected office, and I did a video talking about the locations and how people can vote early. And there's only 3 locations in the southern tier of New York that you can do this. So that's why I want to put that information in. And the links to the voting information will be included in the description, along with all the other links that we'll be going into today. So Valerie, I hope that helped a little bit if people are interested in that. And I'll be more than happy to talk more about it if people are interested. And I do want to hear from people. Let me know. Do you think we should vote in person? Should we be voting by secure mail ballot, like an absentee ballot? Or should we just do the generic voting? Are you confident that if there's generic voting, just mass mailing, which I know Kevin McCullough, who is a radio personality nationally, just announced on Facebook the other day that he received a generic ballot for an individual that was dead for 11 years. This person has been dead for 11 years, and they just got a ballot for that person to vote. Do you think that's going to affect the election? John mentions, Mike, apparently there is going to be a big voter fraud investigation release from Project Veritas tomorrow. I'm not surprised, and I'm glad. Project Veritas is going to bring out the same thing that I'm worried about, which is if we have generic ballots just mass mailed out there, people who have passed away, people who are on voter rolls that shouldn't be there, even in New York State. Just the other day, yesterday I believe it was, there was a discussion in the New York State Senate that, hey, all of any illegal alien who has now gotten a driver's license that was pushed through by Governor Cuomo, well, they have one press of a button and they're now registered to vote. How many of those people are going to vote, and how is that going to throw off the election? That's why I say we need secure forms of making sure we vote. Vote in person, vote by secure mail, but not generic ballot. And I look forward to seeing that from Project Veritas tomorrow. It should be very interesting. But I did want to speak about that to start off with, and obviously it is a big issue, and it's going to be even bigger as we are now 38 days away from the election. But there's also, I'm going to get into talking about Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Barrett, or who may become Justice Barrett for the Supreme Court, the nomination. Last week on the show, if you saw it, we made the prediction pretty much ahead of everyone saying Amy Coney Barrett was going to be the nominee. We had expected it on Monday or Tuesday. The announcement came yesterday, but it is in fact who we thought it would be. So what are the consequences? Well, I'm going to get to that. I also want to address, when I said last week, I also said that people were going to stop talking about Black Lives Matters, and we're going to see the media abandon them and go into talking about the Supreme Court justice nomination, the vote that's going to happen, and to talk about the Senate, so that whether or not Democrats can take the Senate back and therefore pack the court as they have promised, and to flood the court with liberals so that they can regain control, which is not the way our Supreme Court is supposed to work. That is not the way the system is supposed to happen. And it really, really makes a mockery of the entire Supreme Court. A lot of people may not agree with me on that. Some people may say, Mike, that's not a mockery, that's justice. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you're doing it expressly for the only reason of trying to maintain control, that is political power manipulation. That is a manipulation of the system, and that is the least American thing that you could possibly do. If packing in the court is what Democrats are promising us, if they take over the Senate, then they are absolutely destroying the system itself, because that is a perversion of the system. It's one thing to say, well, we could have one or two more justices to try and balance it out, or because 9 is an odd number. You might want to make that argument. I don't see a reason why we should make that argument. But to say that you're going to add 4 or 5 members to the court for the mere purpose of making sure that you have enough liberals on there, that is absolutely, absolutely against the way the system is supposed to be. John mentions to me, do you think that the media focusing on Amy Barrett's faith will be the main attack liberals will use against her? If so, what is your opinion on that? I'm going to get to that. Actually, since everyone's bringing it's coming up, let me address it now. Amy Barrett is being attacked not just because of, well, let me show you. Here it is. So I was going to get to this a little bit later in the show, but let's bring it up now. This is straight off of YouTube, off of Facebook, and we can see on YouTube, on Twitter, we're seeing people already talk. There's 2 main ways that Amy Barrett is being attacked right now. The first one is she's an evil person because she accepted the nomination for Supreme Court justice. And I think that's just stupid. So we've seen that in, Will McAvoy, Walter Schaub, Seth Abramson, David Frum. They're all talking about this, that she's just horrible because she accepted one of the highest honors that can be afforded to someone in the United States, and especially for someone in the legal system. Valerie mentions, a little off subject, but I accidentally watched a news program directed entirely at teens kids, expressing to them the absolute importance of getting out and voting if they are 18 by November 3rd. I agree with that. I think everyone should vote. I've said many, many times on the show that everyone, if we had on average in every election, 7 out of 10 people voting instead of 3 or 4 people out of average voting, the entire political system would be entirely different right now. America would be transformed simply because more people actually showed up to vote. And I'll get into that in a moment. But I think it's good. I think it's bad if we're telling those kids, go out and vote for a specific political party. That's wrong. But telling them go out and vote, absolutely. Valerie goes on to say then what their parents have told them and will persuade them to do. We all learn from different sources. Many people learn from our parents. I can't fault that. And I won't fault that. The bigger thing is that people go out and vote, and the more people that go out and vote, the better our system becomes, I believe. Although I know they have the right to vote at 18, I personally do not want to see any presidential election swayed by the minds of 18-year-olds who truly do not have their experience in life. Yeah, it's a problem. Well, they're adults. And yes, they don't have a whole lot of life experience, which is one of the reasons why Democrats have been saying that they want to lower the age of voting to 16. Mind you, they also say that people can't have a gun unless they're 21. So there's a lot of problems with that. And Valerie, bring this back up in a second. I want to get back to Amy, and I want to address that a little bit, and then I'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about the voting. I just want to keep a train of thought here. So, and I see Valerie mentions Amy is the right choice. I believe you predicted that last week. I did. In last week's show, we did go over, and I said directly, it wasn't going to be, there were a couple names out there. It absolutely was going to be her, especially since we only have 38 days left. She's already been vetted. She's already a known figure. She's obviously well qualified. And that's why we're seeing people like we see here with Will McAvoy and Seth Abramson. They're not attacking her qualifications. And really, Democrats can't attack her qualifications. She is absolutely qualified enough to be a Supreme Court justice. That is not in question. The question the question that Democrats have to now throw out there is, well, it's not a question of her being qualified enough. It's not a question of her gender, which they can't attack either. Well, not directly. They have to say, well, it's evil for her to do this at this time, which is stupid. Because if we remember what Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg said in 2016, she said that it is the obligation, it is the constitutional right of the president to nominate a Supreme Court justice. And it is the obligation of the Senate to consent, to add their thoughts and consent on that, and to vote on that nominee. That is how the government works. That's what she said when she wasn't being misinterpreted, I believe, by the various political influences that have come out since she was dead. Because while she was alive, she never once said that we shouldn't have the president do his constitutional right and nominate a nominee. Which is why we have, and that's why the Democrats are now split into two parties on this. One is saying to do this is evil, which is trying to manipulate the public emotionally by making you feel like you're somehow being cheated, which is a lie. They're trying to put some doubt into people's minds that this isn't the way that's supposed to go, that this is somehow a bad or misuse or abuse of the system. It isn't. This is the rights by the Constitution. This is exactly what the president is expected to do, and this is what the Senate is expected to do. These are their obligations. And people forget that because that's what the media is trying to change. So they're trying to say, well, it's a bad thing. I'm worried by a judge who'd accept the nomination. I guarantee you that, and when this was a similar situation for President Obama or any other president, no matter what party affiliation, when the president says, would you like to be on the Supreme Court? If you're qualified, you say yes. And of course you do this. No one in their right mind would turn that down if they thought they were qualified and capable of doing the job. It's not someone who's doing something evil. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just stupid. And we can even see Walter Shaub is saying, her qualifications are irrelevant. No, it's the only thing that's relevant. It's not relevant whether she's a woman or not, and at least it shouldn't be. And according to Democrats, gender is, I know they want gender to be the reason, but it's not. Gender is not a factor here. Gender doesn't make you smarter or dumber, better or worse. It's your gender. So her gender is not important in this. It's her qualifications. That's the only thing that's important. Everything else is irrelevant, especially the feelings of a couple of progressives who are upset that they're not going to have the opportunity to have their choice instead of President Trump having that choice. But there is another point of view that Democrats have come out with about this. And it was mentioned by both Breitbart on the 25th, mentioning that Democrats started a smear campaign against Amy Coney Barrett on her adopted children. And again, we see that it was also reported by the New York Post yesterday on the 26th. Essentially, what Democrats are doing right now is their other approach, because it seems saying that she's evil for accepting a position, people don't agree with that. I don't think that got any traction. People agree with me that it's silly. If you've been nominated, why wouldn't you accept it if you're qualified? So people have rejected that. So they went on to something that is even more emotional. Not just saying that she's an evil person for saying yes, but we now hear the argument saying, well, she has mixed race children. And there's something wrong with that. She's dangerous because she has mixed race children. Because she adopted children from Haiti, well, that means she must be evil. Now, there's a lot of problems in our government with individuals who are allowing sex trading to go on. That they have sex slaves and they have children being taken for all kinds of horrible reasons, pedophiles out there. And we've seen that with the Me Too movement. We've seen that more so with the arrest of Harvey Weinstein. We found out recently from a Senate investigation about Hunter Biden being given $3 million by the wife of the mayor of one of the Russian cities, who then spent part of that money on sex slaves. So yeah, there's a problem with sex slaves and selling human beings, slavery, human trafficking for elected officials and some of their closest kin. There is a massive problem with that. But that isn't a well-known, devout Christian who has 5 children of her own, out of the goodness of her heart, adopts 2 more children. To all investigation and to all knowledge, not one question has ever been raised in over 10 years that she has had these children. No one has ever had a question. No one has ever raised any doubt about the way those children are being raised, just like anyone else in her family. No one has questioned that. And now liberals on social media are coming up and saying, well, there's something wrong with that. Why? Because it's interracial? Guess what? If the liberals, who are the far left, who are arguing and trying to say that there's something evil with a woman and a family that are adopting children, especially from a war-torn part of the world, a part of the world that had been afflicted by a natural disaster, if they're saying that that's such an evil thing, and because at the end of the day, it's the kids have a different race, those people are racist. Which I say often when it comes to things like BLM, plot, and most of the far left, they are racist and sexist. Not because I think so, but because of what their policies demand and the way that they are executed. They demanded that Kamala Harris had to be picked because she was a black or person of color and a woman. Not because she's the best person for the job. Not because she's the most effective person for the job. Not because she had the best policies and ideas. It was because she filled the box of person of color, and she also filled the box of a woman. That's it. That's why she's in. Because if they were going by her qualifications, well, we know what would have happened there. Kamala Harris was rejected by the Democratic Party when they had every opportunity to have her as their nominee or to keep her in the race. She never got more than 5% of Democrats that were actually supporting her. She was not a favorite of the Democrats. The Democratic Party rejected her wholesale. The only reason why she's in this is because Joe Biden is the gaffe machine that he is, and he constantly says things like, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Saying things like, you know what, poor kids are just as smart as white kids. These are Biden quotes. And you can go back decades for these quotes. He doesn't want his kids to go into the same schools as kids of different races because it would be a jungle. This is what Joe Biden has said. And that's why Kamala Harris called him out as a racist and a sexist and a sexual predator in the Democratic debates. I know most people didn't watch those debates because they were boring. And I covered them at the time, but she came out and said it herself. And you know what that means? Kamala Harris is actually one of the reasons why I really don't like her as a candidate, besides the fact that she's a Democrat and I disagree with her philosophy, is the fact that she sold out. On national TV, she said she believes the sex, and everyone's forgotten, there are 7 accusations of sexual assault against Joe Biden at this moment. At least 1 or 2 of them are considered credible. Absolutely credible. Where's the investigation on that? I don't know. But there's at least 1 to 2 of those credible cases that Kamala Harris said she believes the women, because she believes in Me Too, and thinks Joe is guilty. And she turned around and said, hey, you know what, Joe? I'll be your vice presidential candidate. Yes, I will. Well, think about that for a second, folks. If she turned around and said, I will work for a sexual predator, and you want to tell me that Amy Barrett is somehow evil because she decided to say yes to the Supreme Court nomination? Someone has their values really screwed up right now. Kamala Harris said yes to someone she considers a sexual predator. Those aren't my words. That's Kamala Harris on the debate stage with Joe Biden. She thinks he's a sexual predator, and she said yes to work for him. If that isn't selling out to evil, if she truly believes that he's a sexual predator and that the woman is telling the truth, and she sold out to him for the opportunity to be a vice president, that is evil. You can't tell me that that is in any way on the same scale as Amy Barrett saying, yes, I'll become Supreme Court Justice because the Constitution allows the president to nominate me and the Senate to vote on it. And I know there are liberals that are going to be watching this and they're going to go, I hate you, Mike. That's just horrible. But that's the reality. That's the fact that we're dealing with right now. That's the comparison we're making. Or at least that's the comparison we should be making and understanding that's what you're voting on right now. And so one of the consequences of Amy Barrett being nominated, I believe, should be us evaluating Kamala Harris and what she's doing. If the far left is going to tell me that it's wrong for her to accept the nomination and somehow she's a racist because she adopted interracial kids that were black from Haiti, we have to evaluate what are the Democrats actually standing up for. Now, if there's any Democrats that are watching this, are there anyone on the far left that are watching this, you disagree with me, hey, no problem. Call in and tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why my logic doesn't make sense. Tell me why these facts don't apply. Tell me how the sexual assault case accusations against Joe Biden, the same kind of sexual assault cases that forced out Al Franken from the Senate, the same cases that caused Harvey Weinstein to finally get thrown in jail. Please tell me, how do they not apply to Joe Biden besides the fact that he's running for the presidency? Tell me how it's not selling out to work for that man. Because I remember people saying everyone who worked for Harvey Weinstein was just as guilty as Harvey Weinstein. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here. And if I am, please call in 607-242-1582. Tell me how I got it wrong. Tell me how Amy Barrett saying, yes, I will go through the nomination process that is described in the Constitution. Please tell me how that is somehow evil, and yet what Kamala Harris is doing is not. Because it doesn't have to be an either or kind of situation. It is definitely an and. Amy Barrett is perfectly in the rights to do that. It is not evil, and it has nothing to do with her kids. And Kamala Harris has a problem. And she really needs to explain that. And she won't talk to the public. She won't talk to women about it. And that is a problem. That's why Democrats are so focused on saying, we've got to win the Senate. We've got to pack the court. Why? Because you don't want us to stop and think, Kamala Harris is a complete sellout. For Me Too, for people of color, she's a complete sellout. She's completely reversed whatever principles she said that she had. And they don't want you to stop and think about that for a second. That's why the 30-second sound bites you hear in the news, the fact that people have been trained to just look at headlines and not actually deal with what are the consequences of this, that's the problem. We need to have a conversation. Now, maybe if you're on the far left and you say, well, I believe in the progressive ideals are more important than Joe Biden possibly being a sexual predator. And it's more important than whether or not Kamala Harris would sell out for the position of power. If that's what you believe, that's fine, but at least be honest about it. And we as a nation should have that conversation, and they should be asked about this. Definitely the news media should have asked them both about this by now, but they haven't, and they won't. And it should definitely come up in the debates, which they're trying to avoid as well. As we keep hearing Nancy Pelosi repeatedly saying, Joe, don't go do the debate. Even though he's supposedly working on it night and day, which is the reason why he can't actually do events where the news media are available. That's when you hear them say that he's calling a lid. Just for people who are not familiar with that, what that means is that is his campaign, Joe Biden's campaign, saying he's not going to talk to the press. When you call the lid, that means there is no more press contact and he's going into seclusion, essentially. So Joe Biden's been hiding in a basement. He's hiding from the public. He's avoiding talking to people. And you know what? It's probably one of the smartest things he could possibly do. I want to play for you, and I hope this is going to be clear enough for you. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, got a background thing playing here. And I know where it is. There it is. Okay. So here's one of the reasons why Joe Biden is hiding from the public right now, why he is absolutely refusing to talk to the public. This is an ad from Joe Biden, and I want you to hear this real careful.
That's why I made it a priority my entire career to work closely with you. From the time I got to the Senate 180 years ago, as well as my tenure as vice president. That's why I made it a priority my entire career to work closely with you. From the time I got to the Senate 180 years ago,
Wow. Okay. So if it was right at the end there, and think about this for a second. Joe Biden, his commercials, him being on TV, he is practiced. We have seen evidence that he has teleprompters in front of him telling him what to say. He's been in the Senate 47 years. He's been in government 47 years. And here he is talking about 180 years that he's been in service. I know everybody makes gaffes. I've done it on this show. Everyone who's in politics has made a gaffe. But how many times have we heard that? According to Joe, 200 million Americans were killed by guns. Another 160 million people were killed by by COVID-19. And he's been in office for 180 years. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'd understand if he said, well, I've been in for 20, 30, 40 years. I can get that. He doesn't remember that he's been in for exactly 47 years. He could say 50, he could say 40. I get that. 180? How old is he supposed to be? 200? It makes no sense. I mean, even as he said it, he should have caught the fact that that makes no sense. That's absolutely wrong. It's not like he can say, oh, I meant 80 years. You're not, Joe, you're 84. What are you talking about? This is a problem. He has problems. He has bigger problems, actually, because a lot of people didn't realize there is a speech of Joe Biden, and it was shown by the Washington Examiner. This came out on the 25th. Now, you may recall, it was just about a week ago where we had an article from The Atlantic saying that unnamed sources, these anonymous people, claimed that President Trump said that, our troops, the military, were losers and suckers, which has been refuted by 21 people who were actually supposed to be in front of him, who were there at the time that he was supposedly having said this, including Michael Bolton, who is absolutely no fan of the president, who wrote a book against the president and has said that if the president actually said this, he would have put it in the book because it would have made him more sales. It would have made the book better. But it was absolutely untrue that he never said that. And the media is still putting that message out. Joe Biden is still repeating this probable lie. Even the writer of The Atlantic has admitted that that was probably untrue. And yet, the media is still putting that out there. But how many of you have actually heard Joe Biden say this? And I want to make sure I have the sound up. Oh, wait a minute. Damn. There it is.
Jill, and two, one, I married Jill. And two, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I just want you to know that. Just clap for that, you stupid bastard. One.
Did you hear that? I want you to hear it again. And I know the sound may not be perfect. We'll keep the link so you can listen to this yourself. But this is what Joe Biden said.
Married Jill. And two, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I just want you
Here
to
it
know
comes.
that. Just clap for that, you stupid bastard.
Clap for that, you stupid bees. He goes on, and there were several angles and several versions of this video that have now come out. This was in 2016. This is March of 2016, while he was vice president of the United States under Obama, that Joe Biden called the military, our servicemen and women, to their face, bees, which I won't repeat. But that's just crazy. And then he went on to claim that they're slow. You know, I wish our newspapers were being honest to people about what's actually going on. We deserve to make our decision. I'm not telling you not to vote for Joe Biden. I'm not telling you to not vote for Kamala Harris. I'm telling you I won't vote for them. I'm telling you why I won't vote for them. I'm also trying to make sure you understand what is it you are actually voting for. If you are going to vote for the Democrats, this is what you are voting for. You're voting for people who are willing to go out there and are willing to, you have a man who is sadly mentally deteriorating in front of our faces and doesn't know what he's talking about. We have an individual who is willing to insult our troops to their faces as he blames that on someone else who has never been seen or heard having actually said that, even though there is actual videotape documented showing that he in fact is actually doing that. A man who has had sexual assault cases against him and is just it's just the number of things that are problems with Joe is enormous. And we have a party that is willing to attack a woman for doing what is constitutionally allowed and the obligation to be done. And they are attacking her on a personal level and attacking her kids because they want power. If you are going to vote for Democrats, this is what you are voting for. And if any Democrat is watching this and wants to tell me that they think I am wrong, they think I misunderstand this, that this isn't absolutely true, what I have said, and the sources that I am presenting are somehow not credible, please call in 607-242-1582, or you can type in on Facebook, on YouTube, and tell me, how am I getting it wrong? Because I think that's why we can't do short form political commentary. We need to have this conversation because I don't think people have noticed this. I think the news media is avoiding this because they don't want you to actually have this conversation. They don't want you to have to say and think to yourself, hey, what is this really about? What am I really voting for? They really don't want you to know that. And, Google is helping along with that. This is live. This is Google search trends right now. Matter of fact, I'm going to refresh it right in front of your faces, folks. This is the Google Trends, daily search trends right now. And what you're going to see, lots of sports, French sports, that's tennis. You're going to see a lot of conversations here. You know what you're not noticing? You get even the war in Armenia is up here. But you know what you're not noticing? Anything about Joe Biden. There is one thing about the Proud Boys, which means BLM. And there's one mention of the war that's happening between Armenia and Azerbaijan out in the Middle East, lower Middle East, Soviet Russia. But you know what you're not seeing? Anyone talking about the election. Real-time search trends. Let's check out that. Sports. And I'm sure a lot of my audience is watching sports right now. You know what you're not seeing? What's going on in an election. What you're not seeing is why is it important for there to be a Supreme Court justice when we have an election that is in question, where we have ballots that we cannot guarantee are going to be safe, that are going to be coming from people who are actually alive and American citizens, where we will most likely have this, according to Hillary Clinton, take it all the way to the courts, which means we will need a Supreme Court that is not 4 versus 4, but has to be 5 versus 4 in the worst case. Yeah, we need a Supreme Court justice. And we need someone, and I've heard people compare Amy Barrett to Anthony Scalia. Scalia for everything. That man was nominated. He was approved 96-0. 96-0. Everyone understood he was an excellent Supreme Court justice. The man was based on the Constitution. Everything he believed came out of the Constitution completely. Not an interpretation, not a new redefined meaning. He went with the Constitution. And we need people like that right now. Not everyone's going to agree. But I guarantee you, even if you don't agree, we should have that conversation. And the people who don't want to have that conversation, they scare me. They truly, truly scare me. So we're going into a whole bunch of stuff, and I wanted to get into the Amy Barrett stuff. I was actually going to do it a little bit later in the show. And I am looking forward to your comments, folks, because if you agree or if you disagree, please let me know. Because this is an important thing. This is going to affect, and I know every election, it's always going to change our lives. Except let's look at what we're facing as a consequence of 2020. No matter who you vote for, there is going to be a significant change in this nation. That is an absolute fact. We are either going to see an increase in social justice, or we're going to see an increase in the amount of law and order. That's what's on the table right now. We're either going to have, for the first time, a president who's going to get elected and then removed because of loss of mental faculties and the vice president take over, which is the 24th Amendment, as I recall, where we're going to have the president losing his position and the new president coming in. If it's Joe Biden, he will not make 4 years. I predict he would not make 6 months. He's mentally not there, which means we are actually voting for, or you should be voting for, if you're voting for a Democrat, you're voting for Kamala Harris. And do we really believe that Kamala Harris is qualified? Is she capable? Does she have the best interests of America available? And I cannot say that I honestly believe she does. I believe she wants the power. I believe she wants to promote a social agenda, a socialist agenda. But I do not believe that she has the best interests of America at heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't be the one who would say yes to Joe, a man she considers a sexual predator and someone who she considers a racist. She wouldn't say yes to that man and say, I want to work with you. I mean, am I crazy? Am I not getting it? Does that not make sense to everyone to say something seems wrong with that? I don't know. And I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say about this. I really am. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has these concerns. And I do believe, and I want to come back to talking about Amy Barrett here, what are the consequences of this? We're going to see in the next 38 days one of the fastest confirmations, not the fastest. It is not the fastest confirmation that has ever happened in America, not by a long shot. But it is going to be one of the faster confirmations, I believe, because we already know that she is qualified. We already know, and Democrats already admit, anyone who follows this already knows she's qualified. That's not an issue. We know that the only question they really have is they don't like her kids because they're interracial. It's an interracial family, which is racist. That is a racist standpoint. If you're upset about her adoption, you're worried about racism, and that's a problem. Or they're worried about her religion, which is also not a factor for someone to be on or not on the Supreme Court. And I've heard people say, well, Dianne Feinstein, well, you've got too much dogma. Well, what about Joe Biden? He's a Catholic too. I don't hear you attacking him. How about Nancy Pelosi? She's supposed to be a Catholic too. If you're attacking Amy Coney Barrett about her religious beliefs, why are you not also attacking your very own party, the guy you have running for president and the Speaker of the House? Aren't they dogmatic too? They believe in the same religion. Why isn't the news media asking this? Why are we not hearing these questions be asked? If it is a question about her religion, which is not a factor, it is not a reason, no one asked Justice Ginsburg about her religious beliefs. That was not a disqualifying factor for Justice Ginsburg, who got the vote 93 to 3, as I recall. And no one cared that she was Jewish. Why does it matter if Justice Amy is a Christian or a Catholic? If she was Muslim, would you dare ask that question? Would anyone on the left ever dare ask a question about her religion if she was a Muslim? The answer we all know is no, they wouldn't. Are they going to say, well, you're a woman? They don't dare. Why is this a factor? I don't understand it. It's never stopped her from doing her job before. Why is there any reason to believe it would stop her from doing her job now? What does the race of her kids that she adopted have anything to do with anything in life? It is the bias that we see that is insane. But she's going to get in there. And so once she gets in, the question you have to ask is this going to make more Democrats come out and vote, or is it going to make less of them vote? And I think the answer is the impact has already happened. I think the election's going to be 55-45. And that's changed. And I'm adjusting because a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I would have told you it'd be 65-35 in favor of President Trump. But I'll tell you today, that's changed. Amy Barrett is going to change it. And we're going to see President Trump win by probably 55, because there will be a few more of the younger kids who are being told, the 18-year-olds, they're being told, go out there and vote. And they're being told, especially the women, are being told, well, this is all about the right to abortions, that abortion is on the table, which it isn't. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie that is being said by the left. Every time you hear that, that is a lie. Because even if the Supreme Court were to reverse its position on abortion, that means it goes back to the states, and states would be able to still have abortions. It would not change anything in New York State. If, as an example, New York State, California, it would not change a thing. If you're a woman and you still wanted to get an abortion in New York State, you would have absolutely no difference. You know what would be the big difference? Planned Parenthood wouldn't be able to get federal money. There's the difference. Planned Parenthood would no longer be able to get money from the United States government. Your taxes would no longer be able to pay for the abortions that Planned Parenthood does, which is its primary job. A job that Margaret Sanger, the creator of Planned Parenthood, put together, a business model she put together to make sure that there are fewer minorities in the world. She was a eugenicist. That's the fact. That's why Planned Parenthood finally took her name off of their buildings and finally backed away from the fact of the reality that she was doing it because she was a racist. Which means that the heart and the creation of Planned Parenthood is racist. Its goal was racist. And your taxes are going to pay for that. Again, these may be unpleasant things for some people to hear. These may be unpleasant things for people to consider. But we have an election that will affect generations. We need to have these conversations. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me. I'm not perfect. I'm more than happy to hear why I'm not correct about this. But it makes sense. When we go past the headlines and really consider what is being put before us, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Democratic Party right now doesn't make sense. They're not logical. They're working off of pure emotion, and they are trying to convince people to vote for, because of their emotions, for the political gain and advantage, not of the public, not of minorities, but just the Democratic Party itself. They are the only ones who win if they get to have more power. They will elect more and more liberal and or socialist justices. They're going to pack the court and invalidate the entire purpose of the Supreme Court. They're going to add more senators so that they can control votes. It's going to give them more power, and it's going to cut out more people's freedom of speech. And that's terrifying. And that is terrifying. I don't know. There's so much to this. And I know I get excited sometimes, and I'm very excited about this because it's very important. And we really need to consider this. We need to look at this entire package. And what's going to happen is when Amy Cohen, I have no doubt that due to the changes made by Democrats, the nuclear option, which means that a vote of 51 senators is all that's necessary to approve Amy Coney Barrett as the next Supreme Court justice, which I think will happen, which is constitutionally correct. That is defined by the Constitution and law, that is what the process is supposed to be. She's going to get in, and there are going to be a lot of Democrats who are going to be absolutely angry about this, and they're going to vote off of the emotion, the anger they feel, and they're not going to realize that this was actually Ginsburg's fault. Justice Ginsburg had every ability to retire when President Obama was in charge and have him pick someone to replace her. But she didn't trust President Obama to get it right. So she wouldn't retire under President Obama. She wanted to retire under Hillary Clinton, which isn't going to happen, didn't happen. She didn't trust President Obama. There's your problem, Democrats. You want to be upset? Be upset with President Obama. Ginsburg didn't trust him enough to retire under him. Therefore, you're not getting another justice. That has nothing to do with President Trump. It has nothing to do with the Senate. It has nothing to do with the 2020 election. It has everything to do with President Obama and his relationship with Justice Ginsburg. She didn't trust him. She wouldn't resign under him. Now you don't get that justice. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That is a fact. And when we look at these facts, we say, okay, but we're going to see Democrats who have been trained to react emotionally to the headlines that are out there. And they're going to feel that these Democrats have said that, Cohen has to be evil to accept this. Something must be wrong with her because she's got black kids in her white family. And they're throwing that all out there so that someone's going to have an emotional reaction. And I think they're going to make the race a little bit closer. But I think the overwhelming number of people in America are going to say, no, this isn't emotional. I'm not going to pay back. There's no kind of retribution in my vote. My vote isn't about retribution. It's about what's good for America. It's about our right to be able to pick the best person, not our emotional backlash because of something we didn't like. That's not what it's about. At least that's what it's supposed to be about. And it's not about abortion. And it probably isn't Amy Coney Barrett. It isn't even about the Second Amendment. Not up front anyway. But Democrats are going to definitely make it sound like it is. And that's sad. Hang on, we got a call coming in. Hello, this is Michael Voss on No Soundbites Allowed. We thank you for joining us. And who's this?
Hey, Mike, it's Jason.
Hey, Jason. Folks, if you haven't seen the show before, this is Jason is a caller, a repeat caller, and we're happy to have you on the show. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple points. It's basically on Barrett, and it's just to talk about religion and, this word of dogma. And, I kind of think back to a conversation I heard the other day where an individual, was saying that, we really don't want to, talk about religion. And all I could think is that the thing is that what is the definition of religion? Because the thing is that I suppose maybe they, envision religion as being anything with dogmas in it or anything that to them isn't supported by science. And yet I look at a massive number of progressive ideas which they believe are based upon science, but yet are completely driven by dogma. I mean, when it comes to, climate change, and their Green New Deal, even when it comes to things like individuals' diets, and justification for being like, vegan, you've got PETA and animal activists or just individuals, changing diet due to the climate change and environment. Then when it comes to different forms of government, like Marxism and like socialism, I mean, there's almost a religious altruism that is driven into these because to them, they want to tell you of how you feel or how you should feel about other individuals, and you're being selfish by not adopting that philosophy.
Well, they want you to accept their faith that it's going to
Yes.
be better. The faith of socialism is better than capitalism, even though there is no proof of that. They believe it, and you should believe it too. You mean something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, when it even comes into some of the social science, ideas. I mean, you look at this new thing with the critical race theory. I mean, that itself is a new religion. And the irony is that, these individuals would place that against Christian principles and say, well, look at those Christian principles aren't based on science, yet critical race theory is, and for then, that is superior to what a principled Christian, would be.
Well, one second. So what you're meaning by that, and not everyone knows what critical race theory is.
Okay, yeah.
So that's when you're saying that, that means gender identity politics. So if you hear someone say gender identity politics, it's the same thing as critical race theory. They're both interwoven there, where you have hierarchies of individuals based on their race, their gender, their sexual preferences, their sexual identities. It's all interwoven in there, the intersectionality of it. So these are all terms that go interchangeably amongst themselves. And yes, there is a belief that, well, you have to believe it because we say it's true, even though there isn't really science to prove that. There's no science that shows there's 32 genders. There's 2. But they believe that there's 32, and you should believe it too because they want you to. So you should be converted to that thought. There's no proof that global warming is man-made. The planet, the temperature, the weather changes every day. There's no proof that man has done anything about it, or that we have the capability to fix it, because that's kind of conceited. But they want you to believe that we can, even though every proof that they've come up with, all science has shown that everything they're talking about is wrong. And that's just historical fact, that's scientific fact. They have no actual model that works. So that's what you're talking about when you're saying they want people to believe that, and when they're specifically talking about the critical race theory and the intersectionality. Okay?
Yeah. And so what I'm basically doing is I'm just simply comparing, Barrett. I mean, she's, a Catholic, and they're talking about her religion, and they're talking about dogma. And I'm just simply pointing to, obviously, all the different dogmas that are within all these different, political theories. And yet, the left, drives these as being absolute fact, when the science, when you actually do put them to test, which, like, for example, Marxism, socialism, even, the climate change, so the solutions to climate change, which were completely debunked by no other than Michael Moore himself in that one documentary, Planet of the Humans. I mean, every single one of these things has been proven by science in some form of way that they just don't work. And yet here, they simply want to just point and say, Christian religion, bad, dogmatic, get rid of her. You know what I mean?
I do. And for people who don't know, I actually did review the Planet of the Humans documentary, where Michael Moore was the producer of that documentary, which debunked all of the green energy theories that are out there, showing how none of them are working, which is something that, if you actually look at the science, is a proven fact. They actually create more pollution by their existence, not less. So that's something that a lot of people should know. And there's also things like, I should bring up, they want us to believe, as an example, right now, and I hope I may be getting a call about this in a little bit, but right now there is ongoing an event in Broome County by none other than Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, basically the far left fringe, under the different names of Truth Farm, of Justice for whatever, and Citizen Action. They're all the same group of people. And they're all out there saying, let's defund the police. They've now changed the way that they're going to say it. And that's the thing they always love to do. So now it's divest and reinvest in our community. No, it means defund the police, which means disband the police. And again, they want you to believe that if we get rid of the police, you're suddenly somehow going to be safer, even though every bit of evidence we have seen in Portland, Seattle, Kenosha, New York City, everywhere we've seen it, the answer is no, it gets worse. But they want you to believe that it's going to be true just because they believe it. And that is troubling. That is very troubling, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. And the police situation is just infuriating. So they're trying to change words, but yet they don't really redefine their theory at all. Because the thing is, again, this is based upon the fact that our government is systemically racist. And so, and then our modern justice system is systemically racist. And so by extension, any employees that work for that system and enforce that law, then by extension are racist. And so when they want to, defund or whatever cut back on police, they want to, eliminate the racist from the system and implant some other, system that isn't racist in their world. And yet the bottom line is that they never really truly, define how is that going to work out, in the end. How do you test that narrative? Where do you see that work?
The idea is flawed from the very beginning, and I'll give you a great example of it. So we have divest from the police, which means disband the police or defund the police. People like Anthony Brindisi, people like Bob Wessler, people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris believe in this idea. And when they tell you to believe that, we have to understand, Joe Biden has been they're saying, well, the government's all wrong. Joe Biden is the government. He's been there for 47 years. Do you think a man who's been there for 47 years is suddenly changing his tune and saying, I'm going to get rid of the police and institutional racism will go away because that white man, that rich old white man who has propped up that institutional racism that they say exists is going to change it? No, he's not. No, he's not. They're not being honest with people. I mean, at every single point, we can look at what they're saying, and it's fundamentally flawed. And people should know what they're voting for. I mean, does that not make sense? That if Joe Biden has been there for 47 years, he's part of the institutional racism that they're telling us we should be voting against? I mean, does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah, honestly, the entire thing to me, their logic doesn't make sense to a rational person. And what sometimes it scares me, I just kind of wonder is if the Democrat Party is pushing, these theories so hard, I mean, do they somehow have polling saying that 50% or 60% of the country is actually in for this stuff?
As far as I've been able to determine, the country is rejecting Black Lives Matter, which is part of why we're seeing Democrats run from that idea to talk about everything except that. That's why they want to talk about the Supreme Court race, because no one in the public, including black people, there was a report, I think it was by YouGov poll, I believe it was, that 60% of the nation wants as many police, if not more police, than they have right now. No one wants to get rid of the police, not even black people. Not even blacks. So they're trying to convince people of something that no one agrees with. No one agrees with that, except for the fringe of these extremist groups who have a political goal in mind. And if they really wanted to help people, they would be actually doing something about all the murders that are going on. But I haven't heard Plot or BLM or Antifa denounce even one of the cases of murder that have happened under their name, it says a lot.
You just kind of said something that I kind of put together, is that you said there's that protest in Bennington that's happening, and yes. You said that they're repositioning what they're actually saying that they want to do.
Rewording it, yes. Yeah,
they're rewording it. And so the thing is that the messaging obviously has to be hitting a demographic of individuals who believe them. And the bottom line is that they're probably not, maybe the most, politically apt, and they don't know, they have a big circle of individuals that they're getting their information from. But at some point, they must be part of that crowd that is rejecting that. And so they need to keep those people on board. And that's why they are, simply just, changing the wording slightly.
Well, you got to remember that just about 2 weeks ago it was, where I did the live stream covering a group, a big protest. They brought in, for people who don't know, in my region, in the southern tier of New York, the plot, Progressive Leaders for Tomorrow and Black Lives Matters, got together. They brought in protesters from Albany, Syracuse, Rochester after the Rochester riots, and brought them all into Binghamton to make this big, huge protest. They got 300 people. They had to pull people from 4 cities, and they could only get 300 people. Whereas back in June, when we had the George Floyd protest that everyone in the nation supported, they had over 1,000 people. It tells you right there how many people they have lost. They went from 1,000 people that agreed what happened to George Floyd was wrong to divesting the police, and they get less than 300. And I don't believe this event that's happening now in Binghamton is getting any more. But I have, hopefully I'll get a call from someone at the event to tell me. Also, Brain Freeze called in, typed in and said, "The Fringe, a tiny, corrupt, dishonest tail wagging a huge dog," which I believe is an apt description of a fringe. So, yeah, I think even that's why they're trying to remessage this. They're trying to make it sound better than it is. They're running away from, just like with Obamacare, they ran away from, what was the thing that he would say all the time about the economy? Yeah, you can keep your doctor. Ran away from that. They're not even mentioning that. They mentioned that the economy was, they ran away from all of that. Why? Because everyone goes, that's a lie. Well, they want to get away from the idea that it's defunding the police, because everyone understands defunding the police means disbanding the police, and everywhere that's happened has resulted in higher crime. In New York City, 176% increase. In every city, Kenosha, 5% increase. We're seeing it everywhere that this has been done. So now they're changing it to, let's divest, let's reinvest. No, you want to reinvest? Reinvest in more police, not fewer. Let's get more police. I think I mentioned it last week. I had a conversation with one of the members of one of these fringe groups. And he said, well, I want to have police officers walking the beat. Fantastic. I agree with him. Let's have police officers walking the local beat, getting to know people. But if you want to do that, that means you need more police officers, because if you don't, it's going to take those officers longer to get to people who need help. So you need more police officers, not less. So again, they're wrong. We don't need to divest from the police. We need to invest in them. We need more and better training. And we need to have that. And that's why you get places like Binghamton, where our police have had zero, let me say it again, zero police abuse cases ever since they got body cams, because they're doing their job right. That's what we need more of, and we need more officers to be able to do that, not less. But that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say that I noticed with a lot of these politicians, which they just clearly...
We've got about 2 minutes, so
yeah,
go right ahead.
Yeah, they brush over is when every single time they have one of these marches, there's always, a large, voice within the crowd that are saying extremely profane things about our police department. Mm-hmm. And yet the politicians themselves just conveniently, jump over and, justify and then redefine they don't even acknowledge the fact that the words are being said, yet we're all supposed to ignore that it's actually happening.
Yeah, they do like to do that a lot. Hang on a second. But the funny thing I find is whenever they make these claims, I hate the police. They're absolutely horrible. They're terrible. They're the worst thing possible. And then they call the police when they have a problem. Just like Alyssa Milano, who hates the police. She wants to defund the police. And when there was a problem, she called on the police. Why didn't she call? And here's the thing: when you divest from the police, or you defund the police. In other words, you disband the police. Who are you going to call when you need the police? I don't see her calling up her local plot or BLM or, like in Seattle, the local warlord that was controlling the Chaz or the CHOP, the autonomous zone in the Capitol Hill project. You don't hear them going, hey, let me call the local warlord. No, they call the police because they know at the end of the day, the police are the best thing for them. To finish, okay, brain freeze, I'm not sure what that last comment you made refers to. If you can type in a better comment there, because I'm not quite getting it. But I do get what you're saying. I absolutely get what you're saying, Jason. And I think
there is a bit of an irony here, when some of these politicians come out and say, we're looking at the mental health and the well-being of children. How do you march in a crowd of individuals that are saying such profane things to the police and expect, children to obey the laws and to respect authority?
You can't. If every example you're putting out there is, this doesn't work, there is no justice, there is no peace, there is no freedom, then why are you surprised when people are making crimes, more and more crimes? If there's no law and there's no accountability because you go to jail and then you get released immediately, then what's the consequence? And that's why we see crime going up. But let me see if anyone else wants to give a call in. I thank you because you brought up a lot of great points, Jason. You always do, and I thank you for that. I think
all right, sounds good.
Okay?
Yep, thank you. Bye.
Now, folks, I want you to remember, you can call in too, just like Jason did. You can reach us at 607-242-1582. Of course, like you can see, like many people are, you can leave your comments on Facebook, on YouTube, and we will be happy to comment on that. You can agree, you can disagree. It's one of the joys of America. Hang on, we got someone else. Hello, this is No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael Voss. With whom am I speaking?
Hi, I'm Denise Bander, and I'm Brain Freeze.
Oh, Denise.
And I just wanted, hi, I just wanted to say.
1 second before you.
I'm sorry, let me turn you off.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was going to
ask.
I was going to ask you to just turn that down in the background.
Okay, right. So I wanted to say I'm a big fan, and I found you back when my own daughter was at Binghamton in November, and they had that huge event that you covered very well regarding the protests when the Republican Club. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to.
Dr. Art Laffer, and there is video that we have about that with Dr. Art Laffer and the mob attack on the students. Yes, I remember.
Yes. So I live in Westchester, and I know you're running for office. I hope you're still running, and I hope that's going well.
Yes, I am.
And I do consider moving up to Binghamton, so I'm kind of following you because I fear, like I'm going to run away from the liberals here, and then there'll be too many liberals up there. So the fact that you exist up there kind of makes me happy.
Glad to hear that.
So I also wanted to say that you were talking about the role that the police play, the positive role, and what I was putting in my comment was that Darren Wilson, that's the Ferguson policeman.
Yes.
When he encountered Mike Brown walking down the middle of the street, one of the main streets in Ferguson, holding his stolen cigars, he had just come from another call where a mother in that community was had a baby who was choking. So he was helping her baby not choke to death. And then when he finished with that call, he was just leaving that when he encountered Mike Brown, just as an example of the good that the police do. So I just wanted to make, you were talking about that. I wanted to add that.
Okay. I was trying to wonder about the context, and I think a lot of people don't realize all the things police officers do. And some say, well, they have too many things. Maybe, but that doesn't mean we have less of them. Let's add to them. I think that's very important because do you remember what happened in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster? Do you remember that attack that happened? It was about a week ago.
I'm not following lately so closely, but I probably know it. I just don't associate it with Lancaster. Which one is that?
In Lancaster, PA, and we did a show about it about a week and a half ago. There was police were called to come to a home because a gentleman who was off his medications, so again, it's a mental health issue, had a butcher's knife, was threatening his own family members. The police officer came up, and literally the video, which we showed on the show, he literally burst through the door, and the officer had 4 seconds.
That one, right. Yes, that one. Yeah. Okay, I'm familiar. I forgot which place it was. I mean, there's a lot of things. Everything gets highlighted nationally now.
Well, they're highlighted without context. So,
correct.
And the problem with that is, and that's why I try to explain it as I did, and can you imagine if that was a social worker? Imagine if we did what the left is telling us, and we got rid of the police. We defunded them, whether that means like getting rid of 10%, which they did in Minneapolis, and now they have an increase in crime, and they're wondering why. If we do what they say in New York City, defund the police by $1 billion, disable 600 police officers from doing their job, and wonder why there's a 176% increase in shootings. Imagine in Lancaster, we had a social worker there, and he had 4 seconds to figure out the magic words that would have stopped this man off his medications from lunging at him with a butcher's knife and killing him.
Right. You know, people are not educated, especially not in the public schools. And I have a teenage son who's in public schools now, and all they've been talking about, and it's indoctrination, is they have to write. They started the school online, the high school especially, and they're just talking about BLM, 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 and they're drilling this into him. Now, he comes from a conservative home, and we teach him, you know, things, so he's not susceptible, and that's the only saving grace. Yeah. But he can't speak up either. He has to sit there and say nothing. And so I no one's learning what you're saying about the split second that you have to make a decision, and whether you're going to choose your life over that attacking mentally ill person's life. And you're not required by ancient law, by the oldest law that ever existed since humans came out of the cave, right? You're not allowed. You don't have to sacrifice your life when another person is attacking you and trying to kill you.
Everyone except self-defense is self-defense.
Self-defense is self-defense. So, and people like my son, and all of the groups that he ends up hanging out in during class projects, they don't understand. They've never been in a situation where self-defense is really critical, and they don't understand it.
I hope they don't have to.
They don't understand self-defense.
I would hope that they would never have to.
I hope they never have to. Absolutely. So there's so much to talk about, but I don't want to clog up your airwaves.
No, it's
and
never.
I don't want to, but I do appreciate you. I am watching here from Westchester County. I thought what you did back in November was really awesome, and I really enjoyed meeting the students. I have my daughter goes to Binghamton, and so that's why I was so interested in it. And I do love the town, and I love it up there. And I just worry, you know, that it's just like I said in my comment, it's a tiny little tail that gets to wag a very huge dog, and that's very disturbing.
Well, that's what we see consistently with the fringe, is that they have very loud voices. And they make a lot of noise, and they cause, they block off traffic. They disrupt and disturb people's lives, whether it's nighttime protests where they wake people up as they're trying to put kids to sleep, or whether they're blocking off major streets and highways so people can't go into their jobs or live their life.
Right. Exactly. And you could do a video on just that topic. Like, I would love to see that you take your random plot person and it doesn't have to be plot. It could be BLM or Antifa. Now there are older people that are involved too, but it's really not about. It's not about skin color either, because it's just not.
Well, 90% of them, in my both in videos that I've shown of them live, and my experience, about 90% are white.
Right. And we could talk about that all day as well, because it has to do with misplaced guilt and privilege, if you ask me. But let's take them and who are these people? They don't have a real. You don't find an overworked nurse. Or just, I don't care. You pick someone who works hard at their job to earn a living. They don't have time. They have families. They just don't have time for this mischief. So who are these people? They're people who have nothing better to do and a lot of energy and a lot of time on their hands. And that's like, what do they say? You know, idleness is
devil's hands.
I'm not. Right.
Idle hands are the devil's hands.
Right, exactly. So there's that as well. Anyway, I want to let me say it one more time. Mm-hmm. You're terrific. Thank you for everything you do. And what I tell a lot of conservatives, and I used to be very quiet. I was a very quiet conservative. Mm-hmm. And then everywhere I went, the liberals just talk. They don't care who they offend. They don't care what they say. They say things like, it should be illegal to drive an SUV. The government should take those SUVs away from people. Oh, yeah. And I have to sit, and I got tired of being quiet. So I came out as a conservative. And so I'm going to tell you what I tell other conservatives who do what you do, and you're all terrific. Never shut up.
I agree with that. And I say to I constantly say this, and I say this in colleges as well when I speak at the colleges, you are not alone. I know most of the conservatives and Republicans out there, even libertarians, you feel like you're the only one. That's just because the media has a preference and they give a lot of attention to certain things, but that's why this show exists, and this is why I speak to them. You're not alone. Yes. There are a ton of us out there. We outnumber BLM, plot, and the fringe left. We outnumber them, and they know it. And they know that they're losing support, and they know people reject them.
So.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Have a wonderful day, and I'm watching you, and I'm behind you 100%. And if anything I could do for you, please let me know. I would do it. And if I ever move up to Binghamton, I'm gonna reach out to you, and I'm gonna give you lots of strength and hope and support. So that's my message to you. So thank you so much, and you have a wonderful Sunday. And keep it up. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Denise. I definitely will.
Okay. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. So that was another, as it appears, longtime viewer. Didn't even know that. See, there's a lot of people who are watching this just like you. There are a lot of people who have views just like you. And this is about you being able to speak. Now, you can disagree with me or you can agree. You can say you agree with part of it or not all, some part of it, all of it, whatever it is. It's up to you. We got to remember, we're Americans. It's not about we can't speak. It's that we can. That's what makes our country so great. That First Amendment that guarantees that we can have this conversation. Because if we tried it in other countries like Venezuela, my door would be breaking down and they'd shoot me in the head. For all the people on the left who want to say America, Trump or the Republicans, that they're some kind of authoritarians, remember, no one is coming in to shoot you because they don't agree with you. No one is stopping BLM or any of the groups having their protests as long as they are peaceful, which is guaranteed by the First Amendment, which is an absolutely intrinsic right. We got to put these things into perspective and understand not everyone agrees with you. And just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't make them evil, just like it doesn't make Amy Coney Barrett evil because she said yes to President Trump because he wanted to give her the honor of becoming the next Supreme Court justice. That doesn't make her evil. That doesn't make her kids evil. It doesn't make her family evil because she has an interracial family. And we should really stop and say, oh my God, why would someone say that that's going to make you evil for doing the right thing, doing things that are allowed in the Constitution, for loving kids and taking care of them? And why would someone want to play with your emotions like that, like we see that is being done by Democrats right now? Why are they emotionally manipulating you? Because they want to change your opinion, change the way you look at things, and to get a political advantage for themselves. And I did want to bring up something that Denise had brought up, and it's very important. We see things a lot of people don't realize. There was earlier this week on the 21st of September, there was this event that happened, and I'm just showing you a video right now. You know, what's the problem? Jason was bringing it up as well. So what you're seeing right now, this is a woman in this environment. This is what it's leading to, where police stopped a woman because her car in Connecticut, this is in Blue Hills, Connecticut, she was stopped because the car is registered as being stolen. And she's saying, no, I am the owner of the car. Okay, the police officers have asked her to stop, to let them do the process, to remove her name so she can go on about her day. And instead of doing that, she curses out the police. She tries to incite others to attack the police. And she decides that she's going to drive off as they're in this investigation when the police are saying you can't leave yet because we don't know that's your car. Because you could be, and here we go. And they're saying this. Now, I'm not playing the audio right now. Again, the link will be included so that you'll be able to see this for yourself, but it tells us a lot of what's going on. The problem is we have people so hyped up with emotion right now, and we have them so mixed up with what's being said right now, that we have people who are out there who are saying things like, oh, no, we just want to divest. That's a nice innocent word. That's not what it is. It's about manipulating your emotions to get a certain outcome. And that outcome isn't in our best interest, because it's meant to make us forget that someone like Joe Biden is out there actually insulting our military, that he's out there confused about what he's trying to talk about. And they're trying to make us forget about that so that they can take control of our Supreme Court, because they want to take over our country. And they want to be, in fact, fascists. That they want total control. And if we disagree, well, we're the bad guys. And you know what? I reject that. And we have the power to control that. Because like I said at the very beginning of the show, you are able to vote. And I say vote when you can, whether it's going to be an early election and you're going to go out there on Saturday, October 24th and go out and vote, or you're going to go in person on November 3rd and vote. Please, absolutely, definitively vote. I think you should vote in person because that's the most secure. The next best idea is to do mail-in ballots and vote that way so that it is secure and that we have the trust and confidence, which takes away the opportunity of it going to the Supreme Court, because it shouldn't have to. I know a lot of people agree. Sometimes they don't. I know some people. Oh, wow. It looks like the internet gods don't like the things I'm talking about, because it appears that they've cut part of the feed at least. It looks like maybe Facebook may have cut out, because the internet gods don't like me talking about these things with you. Well, we've been doing this for an hour and a half, and let me end it with this. And again, we're always here every Sunday from 2:30, starting at 2:30 on Sundays, Eastern Standard Time, and we are always happy to hear your voice and your comments, and you're always welcome to do that. Please, if you like this, like it, share it, subscribe on YouTube, share it on Facebook, because the algorithms absolutely will not allow this to go out there. They are actively trying to ban us. They're currently cutting my feed right now so that you can't see this. And that's a shame, because in America, we should be able to express our ideas, even if you don't necessarily agree with all of them. You have a right to hear them. And you have a right to agree or disagree. Our voices can be heard, and they're heard best when we vote. But they absolutely deserve to be heard, because we are America, not Venezuela, North Korea, China, or communist Russia. So with that all said, folks, I hope you had a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope some of the information was interesting. Links for everything that we showed you and a couple other things I wasn't able to get to are going to be included in the description on YouTube. And until then, until the next time, next Sunday, I'm looking forward to being able to see you again very, very soon. Thank you, everyone, for calling in, especially Jason and Denise for calling in and letting us know your thoughts, and everyone who left a message.